Here's a number nobody puts in the brochure. 82% of cars never make it past 150,000 miles. 9 habits are the gap between the ones that die there and the ones that roll past 500,000. This is part 1, and whatever you do, don't miss part 2. Habits 7 and 9 is the most important ones, so make sure that you stay till the end. Let's get into it. Habit 1, the oil interval trap. The manual says 10,000 miles. That number was calibrated for ideal conditions. Highway miles, moderate climate, clean air, not your commute. AAA ran the tests. Extended oil intervals increase internal wear by up to 40%. The engine doesn't announce this. No warning light, no unusual sound, just damage building quietly. Until you're sitting across from a repair quote with a comma in it. The rule is 3,000 to 5,000 miles based on how you actually drive, not how the manual imagines you drive. Hot climate, 5W30. It holds up under heat. Cold climate, 0W20. It flows fast at cold startup, which is when most of the wear happens anyway. Synthetic oil, shorter interval. New filter every single time, because fresh oil has absolutely no business circulating through everything the last filter collected. Habit 2, the transmission slow burn. Nobody thinks about transmission fluid until the car starts slipping, jerking, or refusing to shift cleanly. By then, it's usually a different kind of conversation. The myth is lifetime fluid, and it's technically accurate. Lifetime just means until the transmission dies, not until your car does. Heat is the mechanism. Automatic transmissions run between 175 and 220 degrees Fahrenheit. Every 20 degrees above that range cuts the fluid's effective life in half. More than 60% of transmission failures trace back to overheated, broken down fluid. Not defective parts, neglected fluid. Replace ATF every 30,000 to 50,000 miles. One warning, if the transmission has been neglected for years, skip the full power flush. Drain and fill, slow and steady. Flushing a tired system can shock it into the failure it was barely holding together to avoid. Wait for the 9th habit, it'll be really important. Habit 3, the click you ignore. The pump clicks. You squeeze in a little more anyway. That extra fuel floods the charcoal canister in your evap system, a component built to handle vapors, not liquid fuel. Once it soaks through, it starts breaking apart internally. Carbon particles travel through the lines, into the valves, through the system. The results, rough idle, hard starts, fuel smell, check engine light, and a repair bill somewhere between $400 and $1,200. The EPA specifically warns that topping off dramatically increases evap failures, especially in hot climates where fuel is already expanding under the cap, and automakers won't cover it under warranty. It's classified as driver error. The pump clicked for a reason. Stop there. Habit 4, the mount test. Your engine shouldn't visibly lurch when you shift gears. Engine mounts are the rubber and metal cushions between the engine block and the chassis. When they wear out, the movement doesn't stay where it started. It transfers into the axles, through the hoses, along the exhaust flex pipe, and eventually into the transmission. Studies from major repair networks show bad mounts contribute to nearly 20% of driveline stress failures. Most of those owners didn't know they had a mount problem. They had an axle problem, a cracked flex pipe, a hose that finally gave out. The mount was the original problem. It just didn't stay there. The test takes 30 seconds. Engine on, foot firmly on the brake. Shift from park into drive. Watch the engine. If it bucks hard, if the cabin vibrates sharply, if the steering wheel moves more than it should, the mounts are talking. Repeat into reverse. Same check. A worn mount caught early is $150. What it quietly causes when you leave it is not. Habit 5. What idling actually does. 5 minutes warming up the engine before you drive. It feels responsible, like you're doing right by the car. The Department of Energy found that extended cold idling increases engine wear by up to 2/3. Here's the specific reason. While the engine sits cold at idle, excess fuel washes down the cylinder walls and dilutes the oil. The same oil that's supposed to be protecting those walls. You are degrading your protection at the exact moment it matters most. Modern engines aren't 1980s carburetors. They don't need 10 minutes to stabilize. They need 20 to 30 seconds for oil pressure to fully circulate, and then they need to move. Real-world data from multiple automakers shows engines warm up 40% faster under light driving load than at idle. Faster warm-up means less friction. Less friction means less wear every single cold morning. 20 seconds. Then drive gently. That's the entire habit. If this is already making you rethink something, hit subscribe. Part 2 covers the habits that protect the parts most people never check until they're on the side of a road wondering what happened. Habit 6. The coolant assumption. The temperature gauge is sitting in the middle. Everything's fine. That assumption is doing a lot of work. Coolant doesn't just manage heat. It also inhibits corrosion. And over time, those inhibitors deplete. The fluid turns acidic. An acid in a cooling system doesn't show up on your dashboard. It quietly eats aluminum components from the inside, passages, seals, eventually the head gasket. The International Journal of Automotive Engineering found neglected coolant raises the risk of head gasket failure by nearly 40%. Quick check, drain a small sample from the lower radiator hose. Healthy coolant is bright and clear. Brown, rusty, or sludgy means it's overdue. While you're there, look around the radiator, water pump, and hose clamps for any dried green, pink, or orange residue. That's a leak that hasn't introduced itself yet. Early leak, cheap fix. Ignored leak, minutes to a warped cylinder head. Replace coolant every 30,000 to 50,000 miles. Not when the gauge moves. Before the gauge has a reason to. Habit 7. The station across the street. 2 cents cheaper per gallon. Over a year, that adds up. So you use it. AAA tested this. Non-top-tier gasoline built up 19 times more carbon deposits inside the engine in just 4,000 miles. Not 19% more. 19 times more. Modern GDI engines spray fuel at pressures up to 2,000 pounds per square inch. A carbon deposit on an injector tip doesn't just reduce flow, it changes the spray pattern entirely. A disrupted spray means inconsistent combustion. Inconsistent combustion means higher temperatures on parts that don't have a comfortable margin for that. Top-tier certified fuel whenever possible. Shell, Chevron, and most major brands qualify. Add a quality injector cleaner every 3,000 to 4,000 miles. The 2 cents per gallon savings is real. The bill it eventually generates is just delayed. Habit 8. The shift that costs you. Quick reverse while the car's still rolling. Park before it's fully stopped. Nobody thinks of these as damaging habits. AMCO reports that improper shifting habits contribute to over 40% of early transmission failures, including in low-mileage cars. Here's the mechanism. When you shift direction while still moving, the transmission absorbs the load the brakes were supposed to handle first. The clutch packs weren't built for that. Shifting into park while the car is still creeping forces the parking pawl, a small metal lock, against momentum it was never rated to resist. Hondas, Toyotas, Subarus. Forum threads full of owners who couldn't understand why a transmission failed at 80,000 miles. And then someone asked how they shifted. Come to a complete stop, pause 1 second, then shift. That 1 second costs you nothing. What it protects costs $3,000 to rebuild. You're still here. That already puts you ahead of most drivers with twice your mileage. Subscribe. The habits in part 2 are the ones nobody checks until something expensive breaks. This is the habit that you've waited for, actually. Habit 9. Lift earlier. This is the habit that changes something you do every single time you're behind the wheel. Most drivers ride up to a stop, red light, slowing traffic, and hit the brakes at the last second. The car stops. Job done. Consumer Reports found those drivers replace pads 40% sooner and rotors twice as often as drivers who lift off the accelerator early. Here's the thermal reality. Late, hard braking spikes rotor temperatures above 500 degrees Fahrenheit. At those temperatures, rotors glaze. They warp. They develop microcracks. Pads that exceed their operating temperature don't recover their grip between stops. The fix: lift your foot 5 to 10 seconds earlier than you normally would. Let the engine slow the car first. Let the brakes finish the stop, not do all of it. Hybrids do this automatically. It's why Toyota Prius and Honda Insight brake components regularly outlast 120,000 miles without replacement. One adjustment. Brakes last longer. Rotors survive longer. Fuel economy improves. Every single drive. 9 habits down. The 8 habits in part 2 carry the bigger consequences, the ones most drivers never think about until the repair is already in progress. Part 2 is next. Subscribe so you're there when it drops.